and welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Today we are delighted to have Nigel Cassimire, the telecommunications specialist of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, with whom I'll be discussing internet governance and the upcoming Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, which will be held from the 21st to the 23rd of May in Paramaribo, Suriname. Nigel, thank you so much for agreeing to come and spend some time with us.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm happy to be here.
So before we jump in with the discussions on internet governance and the upcoming Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role so far in the Caribbean Internet Governance conversation.
Yes, I'll be happy to. And actually, I guess I can be accurately be described as one of the old stagers now. I got involved with the CTU in this regard since 2005, actually. And that was a point in time when, on the global scale, the United Nations was having their World Summit on the Information Society, or WSIS as it is called. The first session of WSIS was held in 2003 in Geneva, and the second and final session at the time was scheduled for November, I think, of 2005 in Tunis. In January of 2005, the CARICOM Secretariat asked the CTU to address the internet governance matters for the region, basically on behalf of the CARICOM region. And in early 2005, I left my position where I had worked for many years with our local telecoms carrier here in Trinidad and Tobago. And I was just independently consulting. In fact, have been independently consulting since then. And I got in contact with the CTU quite fortuitously at around that time. And I was asked if I would have been interested in assisting them with this particular task. And we took it up. With respect to the WSIS, the mandate at the time was, okay, could we formulate some Caribbean positions to take into this World Summit related to the information society and on this issue of what is called internet governance, governance of the internet, which was, if you could think back to 2005, for those of us who can remember, the internet was just starting to make its huge mark on general life, getting beyond just the techie world and getting into all aspects of life. So this is why the UN called a conference, and this is why it was important at the time to formulate some sort of harmonized Caribbean positions going into that conference. So the approach we took in very much an internet governance style was basically get views of the various relevant stakeholders. And we did that by creating a forum which has come to be known as the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. And the first meeting of that forum was held in September of 2005 in Georgetown, Guyana, well close to the CARICOM Secretariat, with whom we had been working closely to get the internet governance work started. And we met annually since then as the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. And what's quite interesting is that in 2006, after the second session of the WSIS, on a global scale, was begun the Internet Governance Forum. So we in the Caribbean, in fact, were the first regional forum, and still existing, related to internet governance as we go forward. Just to end the reference to the WSIS, after that initial forum in September 2005 in Guyana, we produced a report from the meeting which basically consolidated views of persons who attended. And from the time we did that first report to now, we have been producing products documentation out of the individual fora. Apart from just a report, there is also what we call our Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. But maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So my involvement in the CTU has been since then, 2005, and apart from maybe a couple of years, maybe 2009, 2010, when I was pursuing some other work, I probably would not have missed any of the Caribbean IGFs since 2005. So if this year is our 14th year, I would expect that I would have been present at least 12.
Okay, And I guess from what I have seen from the sort of emails emanating from the CTU, are you the one who coordinates the meetings? What is your role actually in assisting and facilitating the forum meetings?
Yes, the main facilitator, and I can't say exactly since when, but from my initial involvement, I guess it became more and more something that I would have led over the years. And what does that entail? Well, basically it entails maintaining the distribution list of stakeholders from around the Caribbean related to internet governance, and it's been growing over the years because basically we keep adding to it as new people come to our subsequent fora, coordinating also the development of the agenda.
Yes.
Every year, we try to promote a specific theme. In more recent times, though, we've been requesting inputs from our distribution list, and this year was probably the most extensive in terms of the number of different people who have submitted prospective topics for discussion in our 2018 forum. In fact, I was just going through it this morning, and we have a couple of very popular topics, I suppose, right now that will probably end up as main themes like data protection and impact of social media, blockchain technology, and so on.
Okay.
So you'll be hearing about that in the next week or two.
Excellent. As much as the whole focus on internet governance in the Caribbean is quite a few years old, over a decade old, and we at ICT Pulse have, written about it, usually preceding the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. Just to be clear, what does internet governance mean and why is it so important?
Well, it's so important now, especially because of the pervasiveness of the internet in really all aspects of life. So one ought to be sure that the way it operates, the rules under which it operates, and the technical standards and all that stuff associated with it are well discussed, utilized, and made to remain efficient. So back in the 2003 to 2005 WSIS time frame, there was established a working group. They call it the Working Group on Internet Governance. And on that working group, we in fact had at least two persons from the Caribbean members of that working group. And they came up with what they call a working definition. And that working definition, I think, has pretty much stood the test of time, which I'll describe. So basically, you're looking at all the, I'll say governance, all the governance arrangements or administrative arrangements around keeping the internet working and evolving appropriately. And the words they came up with were that internet governance relates to the development and application of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and the use of the internet. Their definition was a little bit longer in that they added in the development application by governments, the private sector, and civil society in their respective roles. And this I guess codifies the concept of multi-stakeholder governance of the internet. It's not a question of, say, service providers alone running the internet. It's not a question of governments alone dictating matters related to governance of the internet. It's a multi-stakeholder process involving governments, the private sector, and civil society, but acting in their respective areas to develop and to apply all these shared principles and norms and rules and so on, standards, all these things that would make the internet work. Having said that, from that definition, one could understand that the breadth of matters related to internet governance is great, because apart from technical matters, and technical matters would relate to telecoms matters because we're using telecommunications networks and systems, you would have special technical matters related to the internet protocol itself, domain names and IP numbers, internet protocol numbers that are used on the network in order to make the connections between computers and internationally. You will have issues related to content on the internet. What is all that stuff going on the internet these days? For many people, the internet is more the applications than the technology below it. It is more things like Facebook and Google and so on, things that they would interface with every day. But again, you would need some sort of norms and shared principles to make those things work as and function as efficiently as maybe they can. There are security and crime issues related to the internet because, well, you now have cybercrime and stuff operating on the internet, which raises a whole set of legal questions related to jurisdiction, for example. We're looking at using the internet for commerce, so it has social and economic impacts. There are issues related to those type of things as well that are discussed under the umbrella of internet governance. And how do we enhance in the Caribbean our understanding and use of the internet for our own development? So there are development aspects and capacity building aspects related to it. So all these things fall under the realm of internet governance, and you would find that professional specialists in the various areas would be involved. So you'd have lawyers dealing with all the legal issues. You might have technical experts dealing with things like security. You will have others who deal with trademarks and copyrights and all the intellectual property matters. And then you will also have more persons more on the commerce side who want to use it for business and that sort of thing. And they would have also a voice in the whole internet governance stakeholder groups, right? So I mentioned the government, private sector, and civil society. In more recent years as well, they've distilled out of those three two other specific groups. One they call academia, so the researchers and so on, and also the technical community. Those are the people who actually significantly involved in the technical operations of the internet. And I'm talking about the organizations like the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers and their regional internet registries. Those are the people who handle the internet numbers in different regions of the world. In North America, for example, there's the American Registry, called ARIN, American Registry for Internet Numbers. And they also handle part of the Caribbean. Most of the English-speaking Caribbean is governed by ARIN as far as internet numbers are concerned. And in Central and South America, it's another group called the Latin American and Caribbean Internet Addresses Registry, or LACNIC. And they handle most of the Spanish-speaking countries in and around the Caribbean, plus Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, who are on the South American mainland. So those persons involved with those technical operations, they tend to fall into the technical community. The Internet Society is another example of persons who might be considered the technical community. So all these stakeholders work together in what they call a multi-stakeholder environment. Each stakeholder has essentially equal say in the formulation of all the norms and stuff related to operations and evolution of the internet.
Yeah, it's quite a bit overwhelming when you think about all of the various actors that are involved in trying to help us all collectively to wrap our minds around what the internet is and could be. I think one of the things that we don't often appreciate is that the internet itself is still pretty young, and it's still evolving, and we are continually developing and having to adjust the rules and what we perceive and understand the internet can do based on new developments that are happening or new experiences that we are grappling with. So, for example, the whole Cambridge Analytica and Facebook issue, primarily considering the whole, the challenges and the concern that countries now have about the security of information and how intrusive various entities can be and the extent to which self-regulation is enough. So some of those sort of issues are being hashed out and discussed most recently, and I think we often just need to appreciate the extent to which we can help to shape the conversation that is going on.
Yes, and actually one of the things that struck me from the first time I got involved with internet governance was even individuals can influence what goes on in terms of internet governance. So all the fora, all these multi-stakeholder fora that might be held related to internet governance, whether it's a technical forum like something in what they call the Internet Engineering Task Force, and that's real techie stuff in that's dealt with there. related to developing the technical standards for equipment and systems in the internet, up to other more, what should I say, or less technical discussions related to, say, jurisdiction, because the internet is an international thing, and there is a whole conference that has developed over the last, and I think it's been only 2 years. I think this year was their second conference, of a group called Internet and Jurisdiction. And the members in there, or the people who attend that forum, tend to be more of the legal or justice types who are trying to figure out, what are appropriate new norms or shared principles that we can apply internationally to get some effective international jurisdiction over some of the activities that go on over this international network we call the internet.
Yes.
So up last year, in fact, in our Internet Governance Forum, which was held in Tortola in the BVI last August, there was a panel discussion about the impact of social media. At the time, we didn't have stuff like Cambridge Analytica in the news, but certainly the issue of use of social media and finding ways and means maybe to manage the information flows that go on there, because not everything that's on social media is accurate information, and people need to understand that. So there are discussions going on in technical circles and legal circles and social circles all around internet-related matters, content stuff, and all of these make the whole of this concept of internet governance. It's very wide, and it could be very deep depending on what particular issue is
it's being discussed.
That's right.
So what has been your observation in terms of the participation of Caribbean countries at the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, but on internet governance issues generally? I would expect that Trinidad, Barbados, and probably Jamaica have been involved probably since 2005-ish, when just after the WSIS session. But I want to know, what about other countries in the region?
Right. Well, two things about that. I guess you can say we've taken two approaches to enhance the participation from as many countries as possible around the Caribbean. One is that we have moved the forum from country to country on an annual basis. So if even it takes a while, at least several countries would have had exposure to the regional expertise and the extra-regional expertise that would come to our forum to learn something about internet governance. And secondly, in more recent times, we've also taken the approach of supporting remote hubs in our Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. Last year was, I think, our most successful year in that regard, because we had 3 or 4 remote hubs. We had remote hubs in addition to all the persons who were present at the venue, right? In
BVI.
And in addition, we also had some remote presenters as well. So we weren't only limited to persons who could have made it on site.
Yes.
But as the technology makes it more and more feasible with our web conferencing and so on. In fact, we're using Skype right now, for example.
Yes.
We are able to include more presenters and also more audience participants. So this year, again, we plan to support remote hubs, and that's part of where the cost of having the forum goes, because we need to make sure that we have sufficiently robust internet access at the venue.
Definitely.
So that we could have effective remote participation. So I mentioned earlier too that our forum has produced outputs.
Yes.
Right. So we produced this document we call the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. Having said all that I said about the breadth and depth of this whole internet governance thing, the approach we took from the outset was that, okay, what are the most relevant or highest priority matters we think for Caribbean attention? Back in 2005, physical infrastructure was key.
Yes.
Over the years, we've updated that policy framework. Actually, a policy framework document was first issued in, I think, around 2009 or thereabouts. And we've updated in 2013 and also 2016. I don't think we have our 2016 version on our website as yet, but it'll appear shortly.
Okay.
But so nowadays we move from just physical infrastructure to highlighting broadband infrastructure as,
Yes.
as a key priority, right? So what that policy framework sought to do was identify what are the areas of priority within this whole internet governance realm that we can put our resources towards in the Caribbean. One of the other things we identified was production of local content, cybersecurity, and cybercrime issues. Well, the jurisdiction would fall within there. And over the years, we've used our policy framework to guide the CTU's own resource allocations in terms of, okay, what aspect of internet governance might we want to push this year, for example.
Yes.
You know, in the last 3 years, yes, since about between 2014 and 2017, our push has been to develop national internet governance fora. So we've had the Caribbean one for many years now. But after we have our Caribbean forum, we found that notwithstanding that we might have come up with some ideas out of the Caribbean forum, when you get back to base in your own country or the Caribbean, how do we ensure or how do we make it such that the discussions or the outcomes from our regional forum are appropriately considered or in some cases adopted at the national level?
No, well, yeah, that's an excellent idea because that was one of the questions that at least I was thinking to ask about.
Well, we didn't have it. We didn't have any linkage really to the national level per se. And since 2014, we've been pushing to develop similar multi-stakeholder fora at the national level. So persons from any one of our territories that attends the Caribbean Forum, in addition to the CTU's efforts, of course, going back home, would have a little kind of a support system, another little multi-stakeholder support system in their own country to help push the outcomes of the Caribbean Forum. So we've been supporting the idea of developing national internet governance fora. In running this CIGF, the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, all these years, we've had some, I guess, reliable and faithful partners in doing it. ICANN was there the first one in Guyana in 2005, right? And they've supported us with content and financing as well. Some financing as well over the years. Other main partners, stroke sponsors have been the Internet Society, LACNIC, ARIN, and in more recent years we've been getting some inputs as well from Facebook and Google. So what this helps us do is, as I say, make it more inclusive by having more people, enabling more people to attend the forum and also have effective remote participation. Right? So all these things work together to try and keep us going. So what we've been doing as well is, well, as I said, trying to push these national internet governance fora, and part of our work in the last two forums has been developing a kind of a toolkit for persons who might want to know, okay, how do I go about starting up in my country? Right? So all of this is to help increase Caribbean participation because we realize the value of getting our inputs into the development of all the internet governance.
And so far, a question, how effective do you think? I mean, it's all well and good that we are having the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum meetings and resolutions, decisions are coming out of those sessions, which I trust is being taken to other meetings. So whether you all are going to the Global Internet Governance Forum or to other meetings. But how effective have we been able to influence discussions or decisions that are being made globally?
I think we've been quite effective. One could always look for, say, more or stronger representation and that sort of thing. But even so, we've had, I mentioned from the outset with the Working Group on Internet Governance, we had 2 Caribbean members on that team. We've had a person, now all the listeners might not know, but in that Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN has a few different constituencies within it. There is the generic names, there is the country code, top-level domains, there is a group within ICANN also called the at-large community. And so ICANN is basically a global organization. In that at-large community, we've had a Trinidadian citizen be the chair
Yes.
of the at-large community. Right? We've had Jamaicans, Guyanese, and so on in influential positions in that same at-large community.
Yes.
Through our work with the ICANNs and LACNICs and ARIN and so on that I've mentioned before, the CTU has gained good visibility in many of the internet governance fora on ICANN, into ARIN, for example. And in ARIN, we meaning CTU, spearheaded the development of one of their policies within the ARIN community,
Yes.
which took into consideration the smaller size of ISPs in the Caribbean. But with the change of policy that we spearheaded through the ARIN process, we got this new policy which enabled or facilitated, made it easier for Caribbean ISPs to go directly to ARIN to get their IP allocations. So I'm saying in the ICANN world, in the regional internet registries, also in the Global Internet Governance Forum at the UN, we in the CTU and into the CTU Secretary General in particular has chaired different work groups in that IGF from over a few years really. The format of that IGF is that you would tend to have workshops dealing with specific matters.
Yes.
And we would have chaired and participated in workshops on various topics over the years. So I think there's been visibility. Part of our thrust over the last few years to develop the national IGFs was that we wanted to get more people involved. Some of the older heads, like me, I suppose, you need to start replacing yourself with young, dynamic, younger, more dynamic, I should say, rather than young, dynamic, but younger and more dynamic, youthful type input going forward, so that you sustain the influence that you have had and take it forward.
No, understood. Granted, it can be a little bit daunting when trying to get apprised of the issues and understanding how some of the organizations work. But I think that for those who have been in the trenches with internet governance for a number of years, is that because you are so versed in the dynamics and you understand the structures, I wonder whether or not to some extent it's almost as if one can accept the bureaucracy that exists, if you understand what I'm saying. And I think that in having new blood and people who would come with fresher eyes to the
Right.
whole experience, they could certainly offer an interesting dimension on some of the issues.
Right. And actually, I think it's recognized that the complexity of these structures is a challenge for new people coming in. So many of the organizations now have some sort of onboarding process.
Yes.
Whether it starts with information on their website or mentoring when you come to a meeting, whatever. Different means of assisting a new entrant or somebody now becoming involved in finding their feet and starting to make contributions. ICANN has the fellowship program in which persons who are new to the whole ICANN meeting process, basically you kind of hold their hands through their first meeting, and they assign mentors, they meet, I think, on a daily basis to share the experiences that they would have had in the various ICANN communities and so on. But ICANN is just one example. There are others as well among the regional registries and the other internet organizations, because they realize that there's a lot to take in and get up to speed with. In fact, I remember, this is a personal experience now, attending an ICANN meeting, might have been my first ICANN meeting, and I think it was in Puerto Rico. I would have been probably 2007. And went into one of the fora and realized, okay, well, when it comes time for questions, yes, you just line up by the mic and you could ask a question. But I went to that meeting and realized that people talking in a particular language, using jargon and so on that you don't necessarily always follow, and going and asking for somebody to explain what a term means and what it kind of is a little bit off-putting. So it makes sense for them to develop these various onboarding type of activities and processes.
So I just wanted to circle back on the whole issue of the National IGF toolkits. Are those available online, or how would someone who might be thinking about the fact that their country ought to probably have a National IGF Internet Governance Forum,
Right.
how might they access that toolkit?
Right. Well, our Caribbean one isn't published as yet, to tell the truth. At the global level, at the UN level, there exists, I should say, what do they call it? National and regional initiatives. There's a group of the coordinators of what they call national and regional initiatives, meaning national IGFs and regional IGFs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, CIGF, or our Caribbean one. I am a member of that distribution list that the UN runs through their IGF Secretariat. And we made inputs to a toolkit. Their effort paralleled our own in terms of developing a toolkit.
Okay.
So we made inputs to theirs. I think theirs should be available on the IGF website. Ours, as I say, is not published yet. We hope we could publish it later this year.
Yes.
But because we would, I guess, customize a bit more in terms of the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what the UN would put out, which would be a more globally standard guide. In addition to those two, well, one upcoming from us and one that might be available on the IGF website, I think it is, the Internet Society also has, I've also seen a document from them which gives some guidance in terms of developing a national Internet governance forum.
Okay, great. And just to wrap up, how can people become more aware of the Caribbean internet governance issues and perhaps even more importantly, participate or contribute to the discussions?
I would say keep an eye on the CTU website.
Okay.
Internet governance is one of the projects that is listed there on the website. When our, what should I call it, pre-meeting information becomes available, because as you mentioned, our next Caribbean IGF is May 21st to 23rd in Suriname. We don't have the full event page up as yet, but it'll go up in the next few weeks actually. That will have documentation related to the meeting, maybe some suggested reading beforehand, in addition to information on the agenda and speakers and so on. Mm-hmm. So I would say keep an eye on the CTU website as far as internet governance is concerned.
Yes.
One can also look at the UN website to see what developments are taking place with respect to the Global Internet Governance Forum this year. Last time I checked, I don't think they had decided a venue as yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be in the fourth quarter of this year.
Yes.
The ICANN website would also show you what items are hot for them. I would say the hottest item in ICANN right now is one that is influencing our own agenda development here in the Caribbean, which is data protection.
Yes, definitely.
It's a big deal, and many of our countries in the Caribbean have maybe partially passed data protection laws, not fully implemented. 2 years ago, I know Bahamas was the only place in the Caribbean that I was aware of that had a functioning data protection, what do they call it? Commissioner. Data protection commissioner.
Okay, yes.
With an office with staff to do their work and so on. In most of the other places, I know people had legislation or draft legislation, but no functioning or operational agency that actually did the work. This year, I think we'll examine that in a little more detail, because in the European Union, they are implementing their new law, which is called the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which is likely to have impact outside of the region, because all European companies are required to comply with this GDPR law, and if they're doing business with persons outside of Europe, the law still applies to them. So they're gonna be requiring that the persons with whom they do business, meet certain requirements as well in order to protect themselves.
Yes.
Even ICANN, which runs the domain name system, if you want to know who runs the domain, ICTpulse.com, you go on the ICANN database, which is called Whois,
mm-hmm.
and you look it up, and you might see Michel Marius's name there, but your name being there is personal data that identifies you personally. And ICANN is now having to grapple with the information that is in its WHOIS database, which originated with the internet, essentially.
Yes.
To meet new legal requirements. So these things are having impact all across the internet, from a technical level to non-technical level. So all of these are current and hot topics related to how do we comply with these things related to data protection. And even we've heard about the Facebook breach recently, same thing related to Cambridge Analytica that you were talking about.
Yes.
And we hear about Russian interference in US elections and all these sorts of things. So businesses operating on the internet also have to be careful about how they manage data.
Yes. And I think sometimes we feel as if here in the Caribbean that, a lot of the issues that are happening globally don't really affect us. And I realized that and noted in just looking at some of the articles that came out on or around Easter time, that, like, for example, emanating out of Trinidad was the fact that Cambridge Analytica, for example, was tracking data for Trinidadian Facebook subscribers. So, it's just to show that we are not immune.
Exactly.
Yeah, we in the Caribbean are not immune from what is going on globally.
Exactly right.
We really need to try to stay on top of the issues, and you had mentioned them a bit earlier on, that some of those that probably are going to form part of the upcoming Caribbean Internet Governance Forum discussion. I think that the thing though is that it's only a few days that you have, so you probably have to be very selective with the issues that you decide to broach, because
Correct.
there's so many.
Yes, actually, if our forum, I guess it's kind of settled down to a particular pattern now as we've gone through the years. It runs for 3 days, and we tend to have more capacity building issues on the first day.
Yes.
So there's where you'll get most of the presentations. You might have some discussions associated with the issues there as well. But the intention is that, especially for the persons attending in person, that you bring everybody up to some level of understanding of what are some of the key issues that are ongoing and would be discussed in the course of the forum. So, you get some of the technical background, and you get a chance to ask questions, relate to some of the other people present, and so on. And the second and third days, we get more into maybe panel discussions and workshops as well.
Yes.
Our policy framework was developed over the years by having different workshops dealing with these specific issues and coming up with recommendations in each of those areas. What should governments be doing to build broadband infrastructure? What should our private sector be doing with respect to cybersecurity, for example? Things like that. We were able to document, I think, what I still believe is something that is unique in terms of the Regional Internet Governance Forum. Now the UN IGF is thinking and talking about having some sort of output documents from their global IGFs, which hadn't been a priority before. But I suppose they realize that the value of marking progress year by year as you go forward.
Okay, yes. Well, that I mean is an excellent approach, because I did recognize that there would probably be a need for some capacity building, because you're not quite sure exactly what understanding people have of the topics.
Yeah.
And therefore to just have a sort of common grounding before one deep dives into the more intensive discussions.
Yes.
Is a good idea.
Definitely.
All right, Nigel, I think that's about it from me today. Thank you so much for, coming on the show and discussing internet governance. I think this is going to be one of several discussions we may need to have. This just to sort of dip our toes into it this time around, and probably subsequently we can do a better deep dive on one or two specific issues.
Right. Actually, maybe after we have our Caribbean Forum, we could pull a topic or two out of there that might have had some significant discussion or progress.
That'd be excellent.
Yeah, we would be willing to do that because our objective, of course, is to enhance the knowledge around the Caribbean generally, and in that way foster greater participation in the internet governance processes, and not just greater participation, but greater Caribbean influence in the evolution of the internet. In fact, I'll say it now. One of the areas that I'm not sure that we are contributing significantly in is the really technical part, like the Internet Engineering Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we have many Caribbean persons involved in that work at all. And this is where, well, maybe people from academia or maybe our technical industries,
Yes,
or technological industries might have an opportunity or an interest to contribute to some of that work.
yes. I mean, clearly, as to the extent that we can participate, and we are invited to sit at the table. So it's just for us to
Yeah.
have the bodies and who possess the expertise needed to join those
Yes,
conversations. Alrighty, Nigel. I know that you probably have a to-do list that's longer than my arm.
Yes, because we still have to develop the details of the May CIGF in Suriname.
Yes, and probably trying to arrange it remotely adds another layer of complexity as well.
Indeed.
Alrighty.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, and as we've said, we'll look for future opportunities to deal with specific issues.
Okay, great. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.